those are things that if there's someone else in your life who also exhibits those behaviors, you can go low contact with them or like no contact with them.
If your partner is just constantly going overboard with treating you like a queen, you literally cannot do enough to make it even, like a two-way street. Like, wouldn't that make you feel bad?
I don't know. I sometimes have issue figuring out if I like this trait in someone else or if I just want it in myself. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, you don't know if you actually like someone or you just want to be like them.
Welcome back to another episode of Coming In Without Context. I'm Hope Stolzheimer. I'm joined by Dylan Yang, and later on, Jennifer Shen will also be joining us. Today, we're going to be discussing red flags in dating. So, Dylan.
Oh dear.
What do you think the most common red flags are when it comes to like relationships?
That's an interesting question because I feel like red flags are supposed to be objective in a way, but then at the same time, relationships in themselves are kind of subjective. So it's a weird split. So like, for example, one person might see a trait like being extremely generous, like if they're on the first few dates, right? And their person they're dating is very generous, you might be like, oh, that's what I'm looking for in a relationship. But then someone else who doesn't care about that as much might be like, why is he trying so hard? That's kind of suspicious.
Well, being extremely generous in the very beginning of a relationship can actually be a warning sign, because if they might later like turn that tap off, and it's a sign for abusive relationships. It's called love bombing. It's where someone wants to spend all their time with you, gives you lots of gifts, makes you feel so special, like they love you, and they do it a lot in the beginning, and they like reel you in, and then at some point they stop it all and start like gaslighting you and stuff. But there's like a term for that, love bombing. Though I think someone being really cutesy and generous in the beginning of a relationship is not necessarily love bombing.
Yeah, that's kind of hard to tell, right? Because at the beginning of a relationship, if you're genuinely interested in the other person, obviously you're going to act more affectionate to try and secure that relationship in a way, right?
Yeah, I think it's just when it's accompanied by other red flags, it's something to look for. Or a lot of people will reflect back on a toxic relationship and realize the beginning of it, that's what their partner did. I think it's not so noticeable when it's happening.
Well, that's true for a lot of things, right? Like, it doesn't even have to be red flags. Like, if you're in a relationship and then you break up, afterwards you're going to look back and see all the things that were wrong with the person or the relationship, and it's going to be more obvious to you at that point. But then during the actual relationship, you're not going to notice those things, or you're going to overlook them at least.
Yeah. Do you think you overlook any red flags?
I'm not, no, there's nothing. I'm not overlooking anything. Nope,
I'm perfect.
Nothing, nothing wrong here. Can give us, please send help.
Sorry, what?
Nothing. So back to red flags.
Oh yeah. Did you say like what you thought the most common ones were? I think we got a little off.
Oh yeah. Let's see. Most common red flags. Bad mouthing your friends, like your previous friends.
A lot of times it's also like bad mouthing your exes. Like obviously you don't have to be like, oh, I love them still. But a lot of times when you say like, oh, they were so crazy, like my ex was so crazy and stuff, and like you say that for basically all your exes, it shows that like you don't have any accountability for what you might have done.
Well, I feel like it's also true that if you just in general talk about your exes too much, that's a red flag.
Yeah, that is also a red flag. I tried looking to see if there were like any surveys or studies done, on like what people felt red flags were, and I couldn't find anything aside from a BuzzFeed article with just like Twitter posts. So I was like, okay, whatever. So then I ended up finding a variety of articles that were like, here are 10 red flags to look out for. And the one that I think was the best in that it had like specific examples and things was from something called betterup.com, which I've never heard of before. It's a blog. But there were 13 red flags in a relationship they said you should look out for. And number one is overly controlling behavior, which I feel like is obvious.
Yeah.
Number two is lack of trust.
Okay. Interesting.
Number three, feeling low self-esteem.
Wait, for you, do you in the relationship feel low self-esteem, or your partner has low self-esteem and that's the red flag?
No, you feeling low self-esteem.
Oh, so like if you feel low self-esteem, it could be a result of your partner and that's the red flag?
Yeah, as in like your partners and the people around you are supposed to build you up rather than like break you down and feel worse.
Interesting. But I feel like that's harder to gauge, right? Like that's not
Yeah.
something that your partner is directly doing.
Well, sometimes it is. But that's, again, it could be caused by a lot of other things.
Yeah, obviously, if they are doing something that lowers your self-esteem, then that's a red flag. But the way it sounds like on this list, like just self-esteem, low self-esteem in general, it makes it sound like if you just have low self-esteem in general, you should get out of that relationship, even if it's a good relationship.
Well, how this article defined things was like red flags are just warning signs. Like it's not like leave the relationship. It's just something you should question and look into. If this is happening, like you feel low self-esteem, like you should reflect on like if your relationships are causing that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's good advice, I think.
Number 4 was physical, emotional, or mental abuse.
Okay, great. We're getting to the obvious ones. Great.
Yeah. Number 5 is substance abuse.
All right, I feel like this list is terrible. This list, okay, first of all, this list is terrible. But then at the same time, obviously it's hard to list all the possible red flags you could have in a relationship. Because like I said, it's kind of subjective in a way.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm surprised that there aren't a more comprehensive list.
The thing is, there's lists that have like over 30 red flags. But I didn't think we wanted to go through over 30, you know? And like this one, they just like write stuff underneath. It's because a lot of the other lists were really super vague and they didn't like say anything really.
I think the problem with this is that it should be somewhat intuitive what a red flag is if you're in a relationship, right? Because if you're at the point where you're questioning if something is a red flag, you're probably already screwed. Or like at least you're the type of person that wouldn't notice these things. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
If you feel like something is wrong and you take the step to investigate online if it's a red flag or not, at that point you should already be considering leaving the relationship.
I agree. If you're like debating, is this a red flag? But I think that depends on what your definition of a red flag is. Because if you feel like a red flag is something like if you see a red flag, you should leave immediately. Then yeah, if you're questioning if something's a red flag, maybe you should. But if you're viewing red flags more as like warning signs, keep them in mind, but it might be nothing, then like I think that wondering is more, it's not a deal breaker necessarily.
But then shouldn't that be a yellow flag rather than a red flag? I've always interpreted the term red flag as like, if this comes up, you need to get out of there.
Yeah, but like I would say I feel like that's just different definitions for things in the end. Like, I've never, like, yellow flag, if we were to say, like, green flag, yellow flag, red flag, like, I feel like that's getting too much into it where now you're analyzing everything about your relationship, you know?
Yeah. Well, then, do you think there's ever a point in a relationship where you're like safe?
No.
Okay, great.
And only because I've just heard and read so many stories of women who are like married in stable relationships. And then sometimes it's like right after they get married, like the man starts becoming really controlling because like that's his wife, like, and that sort of thing. Or I've read stories where like even in the marriage it's fine, but then she gets pregnant, and as soon as she's pregnant, he becomes super controlling or abusive. And it doesn't happen until that point. Like they can be together for years, no red flags, everything's fine. And then all of a sudden, because there's something about her, like, oh, she has his baby, suddenly she's more like his property and he's more controlling with her. So for me personally, I don't think there's ever necessarily a point where you're like totally safe in a relationship because people can switch up on you. Like if you spent 8 years with someone and they love you and you love them and everything seems perfect, but all of a sudden they start doing things that make you question, like they could be doing things that make you question stuff.
Actually, that makes me think of something. So, would you say that cheating is a red flag, or is that just beyond flags? Like, do you know what I'm asking?
Yeah, I understand what you're asking. For me, I think if someone mentioned cheating in past relationships, that would be a red flag. But
Yeah.
cheating in a relationship with me is beyond a red flag. Like, that would be like, okay, I'm out.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because I feel like if you cheated on someone in the past, that's it. I feel like that's a big red flag because it means you're more likely to do it again. But it doesn't necessarily mean like you're automatically a terrible person who doesn't deserve relationships from that point out. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a lot of situations where people cheat, and sometimes like it's because they're in a toxic, abusive relationship. They don't know another way out. Not that I really want to get into the nitty gritty of like, does that justify it? Da, 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 da. But like, you know, yeah. Okay, I'll just list out what the rest remaining of the 13 were: narcissism, anger management issues, codependency, inability to resolve conflict, which I feel like is a really big one, constant jealousy, gaslighting, and lack of emotional intelligence. Anyways, my next question, I guess, is what is a red flag you look out for when dating, or one you would if you were single and like started dating again? Like you're on a first date with someone, what's a red flag you would look out for?
I think the first thing I would look out for is just what the other person wants from the relationship. Like, again, that's not a red flag, right? But that seems like the most important first step when you're trying to gauge, your interest and also like where this relationship is going with another person. But then I feel like red flags aren't the type of thing where you're looking for them, right? Like it's more that the other person does something and then that kind of catches your attention and you're like, oh shoot, why did they just do that? Should I be concerned?
Jennifer, what's a red flag you look out for when you're dating?
I feel like what I was searching for was something like, well, for me, communication and like sharing with the other person about your life or like what you're doing is quite important. And for me, it's like when you're messaging someone and they're just not responding or they're like avoiding your questions, stuff like that. I don't know if I call it a red flag. Yeah, I guess I would.
Yeah, I think that is a red flag. I think if you're messaging someone, and this doesn't even have to be like your partner, but I guess this is kind of like partner specific, but like it could be like your friend too. If you message someone and they don't respond after repeated messages, like on multiple occasions, you know,
Yeah.
some people are bad at texting, but still, like, maybe then you should just figure out a different way to communicate with them, if at all.
True. And I would feel really like disrespected if I'm reaching out to someone and they're just not messaging me back.
Oh shit, I do that. I don't message people back.
Oh my.
I'm thinking right now there's about 4 people whose texts I haven't responded to from like days ago.
Oh, call her out. Call her out.
I don't know. I had a few crazy days though, so I'll just blame it on that.
I mean, I can understand not responding immediately.
Yeah.
Because like obviously you're not always gonna like either be in a good emotional state or just not want to talk with that person specifically, or you just don't know what to say. You know, conversation is definitely an art that you have to practice and master, and people have different abilities with it. But then like you shouldn't leave them hanging forever, right?
Yeah.
Okay, this is a question for both of you. Do you feel like you have any red flags that people would be concerned about?
Jennifer, you go first.
Well, I'm just going through it in my head. I'm like, am I supposed to say this?
No one listens to the podcast anyways.
That's not, I'm sure that's not true. I feel like similar to the messaging thing, I could be a bit controlling. I could be like, I want to know what you're doing all the time. Not with friends, clearly, but in an intimate relationship, I could be quite annoying.
It's because we're Scorpios, Jen.
I know. I'm so sorry.
No, because Dylan always tries to get me to share my location with him so you can see where.
Oh my, I don't do that.
Listen, I want to put out there that my family and millions of other families or something like that use this app called Life 360.
Oh my god.
And wait, okay, so hold on. First
I know what it is. I've been on it.
Also, I need to say recently that Life 360 was in the news because apparently they were selling data, like location data, to third-party sites. So, you know, we don't support that. But it's not like an active thing that you're just staring at where your family members are. It's more
like it gives you notifications, and if you're driving, it will tell you how fast that person's going.
Yeah, exactly. That's the point of it. It's supposed to be a safety thing. So, like, if your family member goes out and they get into a car accident, it'll send you a notification saying, "Oh, your family member has suddenly stopped." Like they were going pretty fast and then suddenly the car has stopped. You know, they could be in trouble. And, you know, this is assuming that your family member is like unconscious or something. And then that way you can help them, right? That's a very extreme case. That's not how my family uses it. So the reason my family has it is just for convenience sake. So like often my parents will go out shopping or something, or me and my dad, like, for example, like a more recent example, me and my dad go to badminton twice a week. And when we come home, my mom likes to have food ready for us by the time we get back, right? Mm-hmm. So then by looking at where we are, it'll tell you like, oh, these people are 10 minutes away. She can be like, oh, I can start cooking now, right? And then it'll be ready when we get home.
Yeah. So I'm staying at my friend's house, and I lived with them when I was in high school. They still use the app, and I was on it when I was here a few years ago, but now I'm not, because it just creeps me out. But that's how we use it too, just to know where everyone is.
Yeah. I stand by it. It is weird, but I stand by it.
Nah, I don't know. And the car accident thing, I don't know how helpful that is.
Yeah, I'm against it.
I guess it's a question of how much you value your own privacy and like how you want to protect it. Because obviously if it's with people you trust, it's not a big deal. It's like the if you have nothing to hide, you don't need to be worried. It's that flawed argument. But like, I definitely understand the feeling that it's like, oh, you know where I am at all times. That's interesting. Why? What do you want this information for?
I can see where you're coming from if you're doing it with your family, but things like SnapMap and what's it called, the app that Snapchat owns, Zenly, the thing that like shares your location.
Yeah,
it's like SnapMap, right? But that's just
bro. I don't have Snapchat, but from the interactions I've had with people who use Snapchat, SnapMap is way weirder than Life 360. Okay, it's like you look at the map and you're like, oh, this person is at the club right now, and look how many people are at the club right now. Wow, that's so. Oh, they're at a bar now. Oh, that's so exciting. Like, that's even weird. That's weirder, but to me.
Yeah, it is weird. I don't know why you would want everyone else to know where you are at all times. And like, there could be strangers on Snapchat.
Yeah, I don't get it. Dylan, you didn't answer what you think your red flag could be.
That's because I have 0 red flags. I'm a perfect partner. Nothing to see here. No issues. Completely fine.
Classic.
Definitely not semi-narcissist. Semi. Well, I feel like there's a lot of things that you could interpret as red flags or yellow flags, depending on what you're looking for. Like I was saying earlier, for example, like my hobby is playing video games, right? Like if I put that on like a Tinder profile or something, I'd get no swipes, right? Because that's not something that our culture associates with an ideal partner, right? You want someone who's like, oh, athletically fit. Maybe they do a sport, or maybe they're like making a lot of money or something. You want those kind of qualities. So then if I were to go out and be like, oh yeah, my hobbies are playing video games for 5 hours a day, that could come off as a red flag, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. There's plenty of dudes who play video games, though.
True. I feel like Dylan's just dodging the question.
I'm answering the question in my own way, which happens to be a red flag also.
Going off of that question, have either of you ever dated anyone with blaring red flags, and how and when did they come to light?
Yes, right now.
How and when? Tell me.
Yeah, I don't know about blaring red flags.
Jennifer, do you have like an ideal picture of someone in your head who could be your partner?
No.
Like you don't have any traits that you're looking for or qualities?
Like, I think I have traits that I like, but I don't know if it's going to be ideal for me, Okay, I like good people. I mean
controversial take. Controversial.
I guess selfless people and nice, but in a genuine way.
That's okay. Wait, hold on. Stop right there. Would you really like a selfless person? And this is to both Hope and Jennifer.
Good question.
If you could choose again, right, and you could pick someone who is selfless, would you really want to? Because in my head, right, if you have someone who's like always doing stuff either for you or for others, that causes an imbalance in the relationship. At least for like who I am. Like obviously if you have 2 selfless people, maybe that'd work fine. But if your partner is just constantly going overboard with treating you like a queen, and then you literally cannot do enough to, make it even, like a two-way street, Like, wouldn't that make you feel kind of bad?
I don't know. I don't think that's what selfless people do. They don't like go out their way. They don't. I don't know. They don't. If they go to school in the U.S., they're not going to fly to Africa and drop everything and go help people there. They don't have to go out their way. It's just they do what they can. And I do have an issue with the selfless thing myself, and I struggle with it because I like people who are kind to basically everyone, who are just genuine. But I also like to feel special. I don't really know what I'm looking for in that.
I know I won't say my dad's selfless, but he's definitely someone who goes out of his way to like help people if he sees something's going on. And I know it's a problem in my parents' relationship sometimes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I mean, it's like if they go to the bar, he'll talk to anyone who's around him. So like in that way, it's like, oh, like he's really extroverted, like speaking with people. But there have been times like if we're going on a road trip and he sees a car broken down on the side of the road, he'll pull over and help them. And my mom's like, let's just get to our destination. Or like if we have like right now, our neighbor is like renovating his house and he ordered the wrong sort of stone. So my dad volunteered this weekend to like help him dig up all the stone that was just put in. Oh and my mom's like annoyed because now her weekend she can't do anything with my dad because he's helping out her neighbor, like that sort of thing. So I know it's caused problems in their relationship, but I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing.
I don't know. I sometimes have issue figuring out if I like this trait in someone else or if I just want it in myself. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, you don't know if you actually like someone or you just want to be like them.
I feel
that. Yeah. Wait, hold on.
Whoa.
I'm talking about in like past crushes or things where I'm like, do I actually like this person?
No, you don't.
No, I agree. I think, well, because it's especially when you're not in a relationship, right? And then you also are observing the other person that you're interested in from not a distance, but like you're not intimate with them, right? Like usually a lot of relationships starts out as just friends, right? So you kind of have some sense for their personality, but obviously you don't know everything about them. And so then it's easy to just look at what they're putting forward, which is usually like the better traits, and be like, oh, I wish I was more like that, because you know everything about yourself and you know that, you don't have their level of whatever trait it is. But then like the reality hits when if you do get into a relationship with them and they turn out to have, like a darker side, or like maybe they're not always as energetic as they seem, or they're not always as friendly as they seem, and then you it kind of jades your perspective, right?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. I have a question. Do you think, shifting from like personal relationships to family, do you think red flags or flags in general apply to family members?
I think they do. I think red flags apply to all of your relationships outside of romantic ones.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, could you expand on that?
Well, just like all the things you should be looking out for when it comes to red flags in relationships, like controlling behavior, narcissism, like not treating others with respect.
Oh, no, both of us.
No, but those are really like, those are red flags. Like they just are. I had a whole list earlier I was going down and they were both on that list. So those are the ones that came to mind. Those are things that if there's someone else in your life who also exhibits those behaviors, you can know to like go low contact with them or like no contact with them, because you don't need to deal with toxic behavior,
Yeah, but I do think it's hard though to be completely without flags.
Oh yeah, no, it's hard.
Okay, I just want to feel better with myself.
Well, I was also saying earlier, Like for me, a red flag doesn't necessarily mean that you automatically leave the person. It's just something you should reflect on. Like,
and I feel like sometimes it's easier to, I guess, learn to ignore some red flags if you're really close with someone, especially family members. Like things like anger issue or like something that could lead to like any sort of abuse. I think it's very common.
Well, the reason I brought it up is because there's a difference in your relationships with other people versus your family, right? Like usually your relationships with others is voluntary, right? So you also have the freedom, like excluding abuse, right? You have the freedom to leave that relationship whenever you want, right? But then with family, especially if you're younger, you don't have anywhere else to go and you don't have many options in terms of what you can do to get out of that situation.
Yeah.
So like even if there are red flags, you can't handle it the same way as in a personal relationship. Something else that you reminded me of through this conversation. Did you guys hear that in the Philippines, they're trying to make it illegal to ghost people?
What? No.
that's fucked up.
Like, so to clarify, ghosting, like, you just completely stop talking to, or like you stop all contact with someone just all of a sudden. There's a lawmaker in the Philippines trying to make it illegal.
There's a single lawmaker.
Yeah, he's just a creep.
Well, the lawmaker obviously like proposed the bill, and then it's gotta be put to a vote.
What? It takes one lawmaker to propose something, and they're gonna vote on it. Oh, that poor man.
The New York Post says the bill seems unlikely to pass in a country facing more pressing societal issues, leaving critics slamming the move as a publicity stunt.
Yeah. I mean, also, like, how do you define ghosting? Like, because it's like, how many days do you need to have contacted that person and they've responded for it to qualify that later on when they don't respond, it's ghosting? Things like that.
When I heard of this article, it was like attached to some statistics about ghosting and like opinions as well. And I think it was like they were talking about how usually the person who's ghosting the other person is a woman, right? But when they were talking about like the reasons for it, it was a lot like, oh, this guy was like acting super creepy towards me. And like I didn't know how to, or like he was very abusive, and I didn't know how else to leave the relationship, So I thought it was best just to cut them off. Or also even like less severe things like, oh, this guy was kind of nice, but I'm not ready for a relationship, and I didn't know how to, like I didn't want to let him down by just explaining it. Like I feel like he'd think it'd be an excuse, so I just stopped talking altogether.
Yeah, I've done that many times in my life. I just don't know how to say no, so I just don't say anything.
Yeah. There was a guy in high school who would like basically, I don't want to say stalk, but like he would always figure out like where my classes were and stuff, and like try and find me in the hallway.
What the?
Find me in the hallway between classes to come talk to me. And like I at one point he had my number because he got it from a friend, and so at some point I just blocked his number, and then he like kept coming up to me in the hallway and being like, why'd you do that? So at one point I literally like asked someone, I wasn't friends with anybody in my homeroom, but I asked if anybody in my homeroom would be willing to walk with me to my first period class so I wouldn't have to talk to him, because I was getting a little like creeped out.
Do you think men are more relentless?
Men are more relentless.
Are they?
Wait, what?
Do you feel like they are?
You think men are not more relentless?
I think they are.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
why?
Oh, why? Why are they more relentless?
Yeah.
They have less to worry about. Like their safety is less at stake, I think, in any given situation.
Yeah, that's true.
I
blame biology.
Everything biology.
As a man, I blame nature.
I blame society. It's society's fault.
It's anyone else's fault except my own. That's all I'm saying.
I mean, it's not always a bad thing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because like in media, being determined and never giving up is like a good heroic trait, right?
Yeah.
But then it's like in a relationship, you're like, don't know about that.
No, but there's even movies and stuff where they have the guy get the girl after he doesn't give up,
True. That seems problematic. We should get rid of those.
Those are not real.
Yeah, well, I think that's a fine ending place.
Jennifer, what did you think this topic was?
Oh, this topic. I should have been taking notes.
It's not that serious.
This relationship, whatever.
It was red flags. The word we used a lot.
I didn't think it'd be that easy.
It really is.
Okay.
I feel like that's how we trick people a lot of times into not guessing the topic. It's so obvious they don't say it. Thank you all for listening.